I'm going to run you through how I like to go about making a gunslinger stitch belt, with the gunslinger stitch just being this decorative stitching throughout the belt like this. It's pretty simple, so let's get started. Okay, I already have my belt blank stripped out, and this is a piece of 9/10 ounce Herman Oak vegetable tan leather, and it's a pretty simple standard belt, 1.5 inches wide. It's going to be a size 36. The customer wants this particular belt all natural colored, so we're ready to go. I already have the fold end where the buckle will go right here, skived down. The first thing that I'm going to do, just to keep myself in check and remind myself not to screw this up, is I like to take this little template that I made out of another piece of leather and just mark where all my holes will go on this end. That way I don't get confused. And from there, I'm going to take my stitch groover and start grooving my lines. I'm gonna not jump into the gunslinger stitch pattern itself yet. I'm going to at first groove my outer stitch line, and I like to come in 1/8 of an inch from the edge on my belts. Grooving these lines is personal preference. You don't have to do it. I just personally like to make sure that my thread all stays recessed and flush with the top side of the leather. So I actually groove a regular stitch line along the outside, and I also, once I get my gunslinger stitch pattern laid out, I will take this little guide out and freehand the gunslinger stitch pattern too. So to actually start laying out the gunslinger stitch pattern itself, there's a few ways you can go about doing it. You can make something like this work. If you have to, you could even use just a plate out of your kitchen. I personally like to just use these templates from Maker's Leather Supply. They are just pretty straightforward, called the Gunslinger template, for $15. And they make this for straps in 3 different sizes. So 1 3/4, 1 1/4, and then this is going to be the one that we're using for this belt. It is for 1.5 inches. They're pretty simple to use. I'm going to show you how to do that really quick. Now we are on the billet end of the belt, or the tip, so the fold is on the opposite side. And the way that I build my belts, my center hole is typically going to be 7 inches in from the tip right here. And then I'm also going to have another hole at 8 inches and 9 inches. I don't like to run my gunslinger stitch pattern into the holes and just kind of make the holes fit around it. I just go ahead and start my pattern at 9.5 inches right after that, and then I'm just going to have a double row of stitching right here at the tip. You can sure go through and add another couple diamonds or scallops down here if you want, but I like to just end my stitching, my decorative stitching, right here at 9.5 inches from the tip, and then just run a double stitch right here in this area. If you are going to be using this template, what you're going to notice is that there's a faint line right here in the center, and there's also a line right here towards the bottom of the template itself. When you're using this to line up your pattern, you don't want to use the bottom of the physical template. You want to use this bottom line that you see right here to line up on the edge of the belt. And once you get that where it needs to be, all lined up along the edge of the belt and it's nice and straight, 9.5 inches in right here from the tip of my belt, I'm going to just be using an 8B pencil like I always use and draw faint lines to lay out this pattern. If you're not going to be grooving your lines, then you might just use a scratch awl or a stylus to lay this out. That way there's not any dark spots showing beside your stitching when you get finished. As you're laying this out, the way it works is when you get to an end right here, you just want to take this little angle that you see and line it up with where this line ends, and then again make sure that you're keeping this bottom line right here against the edge of the belt. Make sure it's lined up all the way down through here. And as we make our way here towards the end of the belt, you can see these these marks that I have where my holes are going to go. I am going to, again, once I get right here at the end, just end up running a double row of stitching along the end of the belt right here, instead of just continuously running it where I'm going to punch all these holes. Something to be mindful of is if you have a maker stamp that you're usually putting somewhere down here on the belt, you might end this early, say right here at the bottom of this, and then just run out with your double stitching, or however you want to go about doing it. But do be mindful, if you are going to be putting a maker stamp somewhere on this belt, you might do it earlier in the process or put a mark where it's going to go, just to remind yourself not to accidentally run a stitch line through where that maker stamp would usually go. Now that I have this one side completely drawn out, I have this belt flipped over where this side is the tip of the belt now, and we're going to start working on the opposite side of these little scallops, or the gunslinger stitch pattern. With this template, it's really easy. This is where the center line on this comes into play here. What you're going to do is take that center line and line it up right at the point where the first lines end. And if you get that right in the center and have the bottom line lined up where it needs to be, you can see it has this little diamond shape. And once you get that lined up, we're just going to take our pencil and draw the rest of our lines in this pattern. As long as you keep getting all of your lines lined up exactly where they need to be and drawing this in, everything should come out almost perfect. You can go in and touch it up if you need to, but it doesn't have to be completely perfect. Again, this is just going to be a reference for when we take the guide out of this and start freehanding the grooves. The grooves are what's going to be more permanent. And here's what the belt looks like with the pattern just drawn on with a pencil. Before we start grooving these lines and taking this guide all the way out of this stitch groover, I'm going to go ahead and come in about another 1/8 of an inch away from this first line that I grooved, and I'm going to make that, I'm going to groove that second row where that double row of stitching is going to go here at the tip and also here at the fold. And then I'm going to take this guide completely out and start freehanding along these lines to get this gunslinger stitch grooved. If you choose to do it like I do it and you're grooving this second inner line, just always be careful to stop right here where your pencil marks are and don't accidentally go all the way down. This particular groover that I'm using is just a craft tool from Tandy, and it allows you to unscrew this and take this guide in and out. So now I'm going to take that guide out and just very carefully freehand a groove along these guidelines. This next step is personal preference once again, but now that I have all of my lines grooved where I'm going to do my sewing, I'm actually going to go ahead and sew all of these inside lines and this gunslinger stitch pattern. That way when I glue my liner on here in a little bit, all of the back side of that gunslinger pattern is going to be hidden. So this is going to be a double layered belt. There's nothing wrong with just gluing your liner on now and doing all of your stitching, or if you're making a single layered belt, doing all of your stitching and having it show right here. I just personally like all of the back side of the gunslinger pattern to be hidden in between this main body and the liner. So for that reason, I'm going to do all of the stitching on this inner work now, and then afterwards I'm going to glue and stitch the liner to it on this outside row. When I'm sewing up belts, I almost every single time start my thread in this area of the belt, which is going to be almost the very end on the fold side. And I'm used to working my way down this side of the belt, and when I get to the tip, just being able to spin that around and then boom, start working my way down this line. So when I'm working on these gunslinger stitch belts, another thing I try to keep in mind is when I get on this inside line right here, I want to make sure I am ending up right here and making my way to this tip. That way I can just spin it around and not somehow ending up on this side, getting right here and having to spin my belt all the way around like this, or even having to fold it up and bring it through right here to make my way down this other side. So something that I like to do is to just make sure that if I start in this area like I always do, I'm gonna kind of use my finger to map out this groove and just make sure that if I do it like I normally do, I will end up right here like I'm used to. And if I don't end up, I end up over here somewhere, then that means I'm probably gonna have to start my stitching on this side and working my way around. I hope that makes sense. It's probably confusing, but that's just something that I like to keep in mind, because when I get to the tip of my belts when I'm sewing, I do want to be on this side of it. That way I can just spin it around like so. After we got that part stitched up, this is what the backside or the inside of the belt now looks like. If you want to, you can try to use your stitch groover on the inside of this belt to lay some lines to help that thread lay flat, but that's not too crucial. I just like to go through with a hammer afterwards and go over this thread lightly like that to make sure that it does lay a little bit more flat than it does now. Again, that's not just make or break, but I like to do that to make sure that when I do glue the liner onto this belt here in a minute, everything comes into good contact and there isn't just a big bulging line where this thread is that shows through the liner once the belt does get finished. Okay, from here it's going to be pretty standard procedure. All we have left to do is to glue and stitch this liner to the main body, work on the edges, punch some holes, and we'll be good. For the liner, all I'm using is another piece of Herman oak and natural veg, 2 to 3 ounce. And if you are interested in watching my full-length video on making double layered belts, lining leather belts, I'll put that link in the description, so be sure to check that out. From here, I'll just shut up and get to work and show you what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and throw some neat's foot oil on this. You could have done this earlier in the process if you wanted. I would recommend doing it before you work on your edges though, to prevent any accidental discoloration along the edges when you get done burnishing them. I would typically oil my belts before I sew them up, just because there's times when it helps the needle go in and out of the leather a little bit easier after it's been oiled, especially with veg tan leather, but I just forgot. Now that we're on to the edges of this belt, I'll mention that I do have a full-length video that covers my entire edge finishing process as well. I will also link that video in the description, and I'll probably link both videos that I've mentioned at the end of this video too. Okay, that's going to wrap it up on this one. Here's the finished product. Just got a cool gunslinger pattern throughout the belt like this, and then I just finish it with a double row stitching. You can sure add some more stitches right here if you'd like, or heck, you could even just run this gunslinger all the way to the tip, however you want to do it. It's all personal preference. This is just the way I like to do it. Same thing with hiding that inner or backing of the gunslinger pattern with this liner. That's just what I like to do. Do it however you want it. You don't even have to use these templates to get this same pattern that I did. I'm not affiliated with Maker's Leather Supply or anything like that. These are just very handy. I have them in my shop, so that's what I use. If you're going to come up with your own pattern or whatever, you basically just need something similar to this shape. You can come up with your own templates. I've seen some people freehand it somehow. Just whatever works best for you, make work. I know not all of you will have access to those templates. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure to like the video and go subscribe to the channel. Until next time, we'll see you.